Hi everyone, I hope you're having a safe time at home and just wishing you a happy new year. This video will tie in with the lesson. I'm also going to hopefully stream some content in the lesson live to you, but this is just because a lot of people say they like to have the introduction of the lesson saved so they can come back to it later for revision. So we're looking at AO2, so this is still exam feedback, and we did a lot about agenda before the holidays and a lot about context. We're going to move now into AO2 analysis. When your papers were being checked by the teachers, the ones that are really good, what the teachers said was that they could get an even higher mark just by digging a lot deeper with their AO2. Because a lot of people are kind of racing on to the next point rather than just covering a more limited range of points, but with really in-depth language analysis. So this video is just going to show you some examples from previous students who got high grades. So I'm talking about the kind of 7 to 9 end of grades. These were practice essays they did, just to show you different ways where of putting that higher level AO2 into your essays. So this is just out of revision guide. This bit is about a completely different book from the one we're reading. Don't worry about the book. What we're looking at here is what all of these words around AO2 mean. So in the exam paper, it says AO2 is analyze the language, form and structure used by a writer to create meanings and effects using relevant subject terminology where appropriate. And what does it mean? So the first thing is analyze. Analyze means you think critically and you comment on why things are there, but in a kind of subtle and critical way. So to what extent things are there, how it links to other parts of the text, not just saying like a year 7 would, oh, rain symbolizes sadness. That's way too general. That's not analysis. Analysis would be looking in this case, what does it mean? Are there more than one interpretation? And why? So you could say, you know, here the rain is pathetic fallacy presenting Victor Frankenstein's self-loathing because he has gone against God, and it is only when his creature comes to life and he realizes that it is unattractive, and you can link that to the quote about the yellow eye and all of that. So analyze is much more detailed. Language can be anything the writer does on purpose, so devices, vocabulary, dialogue, any of that. Form is like how it's told. So is it a sonnet in an unseen poem? In Shakespeare, it is a tragedy. The type of play is that it's a tragedy. So you might want to talk about things like hamartia and stuff like that. And it's a play. So you could talk about like if a character goes to the front and does an aside and talks to themselves and the audience and no one else can hear. That's form. Yeah. In Frankenstein, it's the letters. Yeah. Form, how it's being told. Structure is the order of events, which, as we know, is not always the chronological order of the story. So in particular, out of our text, Frankenstein is told completely in the wrong order. If you think about it, it's told right after the story finished with letters, and in those letters someone is in there explaining about what happened to them previously. So yeah, it's the timeline and whether the timeline really reflects what actually happened. Create meanings. So create meaning is what the reader can infer from what the writer tells us and what their methods are. That's creating meaning. So you read the words and the thoughts and feelings that come into your head are the created readings. So you read or you watch the play or you read the book, and then in your head, so you read or watch Animal Farm, you see information about Napoleon not being nice. In your mind, a created meaning is Napoleon is a villain. Napoleon sounds a lot like a dictator. Yeah, those are the created meanings. Subject terminology. It says novels here, but it simply means the correct words for the correct things. So, for example, the sublime, metaphor, simile, motif, all of those things. That if you know the words, use them correctly. We put that last because actually if you forget a word and you use it the correct words mostly, but if you forget one but you analyse it really well, it doesn't matter, you still get the analysis. So some do's and don'ts. So don't write in a general way. So you can see here, this person is writing about a novel we don't do, but we've all seen essays like this. The opening of the novel is really good because it describes what Jane can see and sets the scene for the reader. It's way too basic, too general, but we do see that sometimes in your analysis. You have to talk about how meanings, very precise meanings, are created. So this is a better opening. Bronte highlights Jane's isolation and misery with the use of pathetic fallacies. There's a method in the beginning of the novel, so that's structure. The drear November day suggests a dark mood, reinforced with pale blank mist and cloud. Not only intensifies the gloomy tone, so tone is how it's being told, but also links to Jane's experience at Gateshead. So even if you haven't ever read this book before, which you probably won't, you can see here they're using a method, but what they're also doing is being very particular. They're linking a quote about a dark wintry day with a dark mood. So that's how the meaning is created. We're in a dark mood because it's a dark November day. And then we talk about reinforce, so it's like almost like, yeah, she's carrying on. A pale bank of mist and cloud. And it intensifies the gloomy tone. So gloomy is our emotion when we read that, so that's our created meaning. And then she's linking to elsewhere in the book. So that's a much more thorough sounding type of AO2. What I'm seeing is some people who are up in maybe the grade 6 and everything else are adding more like this kind of thing in AO2, and you need to move it forward to this. So let's have a look at some examples. So where's the AO2 here? Shakespeare subtly reveals the immense contrast within Banquo's perception of the supernatural compared to those of Macbeth's. Banquo depicts the unreliability of the supernatural through addressing the witches as instruments of darkness, whereas Macbeth happily accepts that two truths are told. Here Shakespeare instantly highlights one of Macbeth's hamartias being the unbridled trust towards forces greater than himself, such as the supernatural. Unlike Banquo, Macbeth refuses to accept the manipulative capabilities of the supernatural. So that's just a little snippet, but let's see where the AO2 is in here. So if I was marking it, these are the bits that's highlighted and ticked. So you've got the student has focused on why Shakespeare has done things, and they've fully explained it. They've not just raced on, they've just taken one contrast and written a whole paragraph about it. So to go into more depth, first of all, you've got things like subtly reveals. So that is critical because they're saying it's not a blatant reveal. It's not someone jumping up and saying Macbeth's an idiot and Banquo's cleverer. It's subtle. How? Well, here's the method. They're comparing their reactions. They're contrasting and comparing. Those are your methods. Banquo depicts the unreliability of the supernatural through addressing the witches as. So there is some form. Who is talking to who? And what they have done is they have linked that plausibly. They haven't just put a method in and then just said anything else unconnected. There is a reason why Banquo talks to the witches. Banquo talks to the witches because he doesn't trust them, yeah? Whereas Macbeth only talks to them nicely. So they've linked it that he has that confidence to talk to the witches and challenge them, meaning that unlike Macbeth, he's not so gullible. Yeah, so that's basically what they're saying. And they go into lots of depth to demonstrate this. And again, you've got here Shakespeare instantly, so it quickly tells you how quickly Shakespeare is doing this. Highlights one of Macbeth's hamartias. So remember, the form of this play is a tragedy. Hamartia is a fatal flaw. So they're saying, you know, I'm analysing further. Macbeth is too trusting of great forces. That's hamartia, that's a weakness. That's more AO2 there than himself, such as the supernatural. Unlike Banquo, so again, they're going into the way that this contrast between them forms a meaning in our heads. It creates a meaning. There's a contrast. The meaning created is Macbeth is way more gullible. And then in the structure of the whole play, that's one of his fatal flaws, his hamartias that leads to his downfall. And it all goes down to manipulative, so then they can talk about the witches being manipulative later. But if you look at this, look at how much is there just analysing one quote. There's plenty of sentences. So here's a new one which I've highlighted, and we're just going to have a little look at it here. The blue stuff is stuff that isn't AO2. Okay, so this is a longer extract from a very higher grading essay. The despised ideology of the supernatural reveals itself as one of the most pivotal motifs. So motif is a method. So you've got supernatural is a motif, but they don't stop there. They say why it's a motif. As one of the most pivotal motifs in Shakespeare's transgressing 16th century play Macbeth. The riveting embodiment of the ascending evil in Macbeth. Now that's structure. They haven't just said, oh, the ascending drama, the ascending plot. The evil ascends, it gets bigger. We all know that. He kills more and more people. So they are presenting the fact that the witches are embodied. Embodied means people. So this is analysis. They're saying the evil doesn't just happen. There are characters who appear that are like physically the evil. That's analysis. It's a very high grading essay. Yeah, but now you know that, you can use that they are the embodiment of evil. In Macbeth, manages to skillfully play with the deranged minds of Macbeth and his most loyal associate Banquo. After contorting fate and nature, so that's again structure, and you'll notice they're not retelling the story. They don't say after doing this, that and the other. They say after twisting, contorting fate and nature. Yeah, that's what they did in the structure of the play. They've twisted fate and nature rather than just retelling the plot. The Weird Sisters manifest a reality heavily desirable that even Banquo is left astounded. The instruments of darkness tell us truths. The critical adjective, well, that's a mistake, actually. That is a noun. It should be the critical noun, instruments, informs the Jacobean audience that Banquo understands that the witches are not from human descent and that he should not trust them. Yet, now this is where it's getting critical, because we know he doesn't like them, but we can see that in a dilemma. So this person has a higher grade than the previous person because they've dug even deeper. They've said, yeah, he doesn't trust them, but even more so, he wants to trust them. So a weaker man would trust them. Who's the weaker man? Obviously Macbeth. He wants to trust them because, you know, they seem to be promising really good things. So he's torn, and he's like the cleverer one. So if he's the cleverer one and he's got this moral dilemma, what's going to happen to Macbeth? And you see all of this yellow, all of this AO2 that they're using to do it. So, yes, so he says instruments, and that tells us that he knows they're witches. So there's very clear how meaning is shaped and created. He doesn't call them people, he calls them instruments. So instruments of darkness, so evil, non-people. But he's like also like, wow, they're telling us the truth. And this person fully explains that. Yet Banquo goes on to say, darkness tells us truth, exploring the fact that witches' prophecies from Act 1, Scene 2 have already come true. Though Banquo is alarmed by the manipulating powers that the witches possess, he is still able to see past their unruly appearances and into reality. So there we go. Unlike Macbeth, he can see the bigger picture, that they're really dangerous. It is evident, so you can see everything is tied into this quote. It's evident that Banquo does not associate himself with the supernatural, not because of fear. So this is real analysis. They're now even digging deeper. They're not just saying, well, he doesn't like the supernatural, but they're like, why doesn't he like the supernatural? From what he is saying, well, he's calling them instruments of darkness and he challenges them, so he's not scared of them. So it is evident that Banquo does not associate himself with the supernatural, not because of fear, but that of loyalty and righteousness for who he believes holds the true power of the king. So this person, their why is digging deeper. So they've not only said he challenges the witches, he doesn't think they're normal people because he calls them instruments of darkness, but they've also dug deeper and he said, well, that also shows us he's not scared of them, and the reason he doesn't like them is because they go against the king. And then where I've highlighted in blue starts to go on to the context. Now I'm going to stream this lesson, but this is just a good example that you can come back to when revising to see how very good essays do it. So please watch this, but stick around if you are watching this in January 2021 for the rest of the lesson. Stay safe and see you soon.